Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for the January ERM Toolbox webinar. A couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. If you've dialed in by phone but haven't logged in by computer and you would like to see the slides that will be shown, please point your web browser to readytalk.com. In the box where it says Participant Join a Meeting, enter the same access code that you used to join the call, 9879821. Please stay aware of the level of background noise in your area. If it becomes noisy, please put your phone on mute. If your phone doesn't have a mute button, you can use the ReadyTalk controls to do so by using *6 to mute your line and then *7 to unmute it. We are leaving the phone lines open, so if you have questions, feel free to ask them during the presentation. Also, the chat box is available. If you'd prefer to type your question in there, I'll be monitoring that, and we'll relay questions to our presenter at an appropriate time. If you are called away from your phone, please do not put it on mute because that will cause your hold music, please don't put it on hold. That'll cause your hold music to be transmitted to everybody else. You can simply hang up, dial back in, and it will not disrupt the call. With that, allow me to introduce our presenter today. Sandy Reinthaler is Director of Client Services at Sedgwick CMS. In this role, she is responsible for all client service issues regarding the university's liability risk programs, including general liability, auto, employment practices, property, professional liability, and the core legal OGC program. She is also responsible for the subrogation for programs for all lines, including workers' compensation. Sandy's background includes more than 30 years of casualty and litigation claim management experience with insurance carriers such as Safeco, Industrial Indemnity, and St. Paul Insurance. She has been with Sedgwick for 10 years when she was hired to be the account manager for the general liability program. Sandy?
Yes, thank you, Emily. Welcome, everybody. I think it looks like almost everybody is here. We still have a couple logging in. So thank you for joining us this morning for our Subrogation ERM Toolbox webinar. And what I'd like to do is go ahead and get started now. Emily, tell me if this is working right. Can you see my slide there?
Looks good.
All right, great. So Grace and Katie asked that we prepare something to go over the subrogation program for the university, which we've done here. Just for you all to have some background here, we took over the subrogation program in 2005 at the time that we began handling the first-party auto and property. We rolled the workers' compensation program into the program, I believe it was in 2008. So, oops, I did it wrong. Hold on. So the objectives of our webinar today is to go over the UC Subrogation Philosophies and Best Practices. We also want to talk about the UC's results compared to a national benchmarking study. And then we'll look at the UC subrogation results for all of the line of insurance. We'll also talk about subrogation opportunities, and as always, we can do better. We always want to collect as much money as we can and not leave anything on the table. So what is subrogation? Subrogation is a legal remedy to recover benefits paid by UC from a responsible third party. Every injury or every property damage is caused by something. And our job as a third-party administrator is to find out, was this injury or damage caused by someone's failure to exercise the legally required duty of care? And what are the university's philosophies and best practices? We actually reviewed these in light of a national subrogation benchmarking study, and UC's best practices and philosophies are pretty much in line with what the national standards are. And one of the main things that we need to do is early identification, investigation, and documentation is critical to our subrogation efforts. A claim is reported, and the initial identification of subrogation is made by the handling claims adjuster. All of our adjusters are provided with a Subrogation Job Aid that assists them in their investigation into subrogation possibilities. And the handling claims adjuster will direct all the initial investigation. Our supervisors also review the claim file, and an independent subrogation review will be made by the supervisor. In other words, when they're looking at a claim, they will always be looking for, are there subrogation opportunities available here? Our company best practice also is that there is a subrogation note put into the file, and we have a what we call our TPM, our Total Performance Manager, review quarterly, and they will be looking to see that a subrogation note is in the file. At one point or at some point, the handling adjuster will refer the case to the subrogation adjuster if they feel that subrogation is a possibility. At that point, the subrogation adjuster may offer additional guidance in regard to the investigation. As a rule, the auto claims, those are referred to the subrogation adjuster after the collision is the payment is made. On property, the referral tends to be earlier, and so because those claims tend to stay open longer. Same with workers' comp; those tend to be referred to the subrogation person prior to the closure of the file. We have a centralized subrogation unit in our Walnut Creek office for the workers' compensation, general liability, auto, property, and professional liability. We have 2 dedicated subrogation colleagues. Caroline Castro handles the general liability, auto, and property, and Chinny Law handles the workers' compensation and the professional liability. The university's philosophy is no amount is too small to try to subrogate to get money back. So we always want to review all files for any subrogation possibility. We also assist the locations in recovering money if a claim is below the deductible. The Office of the President Risk Services retains all subrogation settlement authority. What that means is if we decide not to pursue subrogation, or if we determine or make a recommendation to accept less than 100%, we need to get OPRS to sign off on that. The university locations are responsible for retaining evidence. If an expert is retained, the expert will retain the evidence. All referrals to subrogation attorneys must be approved and retained by Office of General Counsel. Nicole Craig has been working to put together a subrogation panel to make this process easier. The cost for a subrogation attorney is either hourly or on a percentage basis, and that is something that will be decided up front. The adjuster and or the attorney will place a third party on notice of a potential claim. The university is not a member of intercompany arbitration, but the university does participate on a case-by-case basis. Any questions before I move on to some of the results? Okay. So this is a slide that compares the university's worker compensation subrogation results to a national group. So the purple bar is the national benchmark, and the lighter white or violet bar is the university's results. And what this is comparing the total gross recovery to the paid losses in a given fiscal year. So as you can see, the university is, our results are less than what the national benchmark is. And again, this is rolling up. This particular study was for insurance carriers. There was 15 carriers, about 7 of them were multi-line, and the balance were monoline. Pardon? Oh, okay. You'll notice in fiscal 11 there is a spike, the 1.38%. There was one large recovery of $220,000 that impacted that year. Now the next slide is the same results, but what, I don't know, can you see my cursor here? Or, no? If you'll notice on fiscal 10.
Sandy, if you want to, we can't see your cursor, but if you click on the green arrow down at the bottom, we'll be able to see that.
Asking to set up something for some of our students,
excuse me.
grad students, and maybe it could be coordinated together. So maybe you could go ahead.
There's somebody talking. If you could please mute your phone.
So that see if the same time would work.
I just muted it.
Okay, thank you. All right, if you notice here, this is the California national benchmark, or this is the California piece of the national benchmark survey, and that was 0.7%. And if you look at the university's results, we're more in line there with the California results. We did not have results for auto and property from the national survey, but we use the same measure, which is comparing the gross recovery as a percentage of the paid losses. What you can see, I'm sorry, I was reading the chat message. What you can see here is for the auto first party for the last 5 years for the university. Property losses tend to be lower. They're in the 3 to 4% range. We did have a spike in fiscal 11 when we received a large property recovery. Our plan is going forward is to measure the university's results against themselves to see where we're going. When we can get national information, we will compare it, but going forward we will prepare these numbers so that we can see where we are against ourselves. The next slide is a slide of our subrogation results. Hold on a sec, let me get the arrow. For the last 3 fiscal years. What you'll notice is for fiscal 11 and fiscal 12, this is for the entire fiscal year. These are our results for the first 6 months of fiscal 13. These results are prepared monthly, and actually they are submitted to OPRS for the Working Smarter initiative. You'll notice that for auto, we're pretty much on target for where we were last year. Same with employment. General liability tends to be if we get large recoveries if we are sharing the defense on a particular case with another tortfeasor. Property, we are ahead of where we were last year. Professional liability is primarily driven by one particular case where we are recovering money. And the workers' compensation is an area of opportunity for us this year. It is lower than it was the last 2 years, and our team is taking a look at that to see what we can do to boost up the numbers by the end of the fiscal year. Where does subrogation exist? It exists when there's a motor vehicle accident. It can exist with a product liability case, a premise liability, slip and falls, animal and dog bites, and construction cases. It also can exist in the operation of machine or equipment, in third-party suits, and in subsequent events. Subsequent events tend to be more in our professional liability arena. Let's say there's an auto accident. The person is taken to the emergency room. There's a subsequent medical incident. Both of those events will be a factor in the injured party collecting damages. As I said, our adjusters have a Subrogation Job Aid. This is somewhat it's a two-sided document. And each adjuster, it addresses workers' comp, motor vehicle, product liability, and it's to assist them in their investigation. Our current supervisor, Greer Gustafson, is going to be updating this sometime during 2013. So where are our subrogation opportunities? For motor vehicle accidents, we always look at the vehicle ownership. In California, the insurance goes with the vehicle. Let's say there's not any insurance on the vehicle. Well, maybe the driver had insurance. Maybe the driver borrowed the vehicle. So we always want to track down the vehicle ownership, the driver's insurance. Is it a rental car? If so, we want to get the agreement. Is it an employee vehicle? Is there comparative negligence? We want to interview the witnesses and document their account so that we can have the evidence that we need to pursue subrogation. Were there any mechanical failures? Did the brakes work? Did they not work? Tail lights, turn signals? And then we want to document the damages. We always want to have, whether it's the auto first party as far as collision, we want a complete estimate, and we also have to document our payment. And once we have that, we can submit it to the negligent third party. Other opportunities, product liability. We want to be sure we document the manufacturer, the model, the serial number, who distributed the product, were there any repairs or modifications that were done, what type of training was given to the person operating the product, are there any warranties. Another key item is to preserve the evidence, chain of custody. This is something where we could really, we really need the location's assistance, because if, let's say there's a broken chair, we want to make sure that we keep the chair, that we photograph the chair, and then we need to establish the chain of custody. And often what we will find, not often, but sometimes what we find is down the road, maybe the chair was stored in a closet, somebody didn't know why it was stored there, they notice it's a broken chair, and then they toss it out. So preserving the evidence is an important item. Other subrogation opportunities, premises liability, slip and falls, who owns the property, we need the relevant lease or insurance information, additional insured documents, maintenance of the property, lighting. This is particularly true for our employees if they are injured on the job but they are not on the university premises. And as always, we can do better. And we can do better by the prompt reporting of claims so that we can have a prompt investigation and documentation of the damages. We also need to educate those in facilities, maintenance teams, EH&S, and drivers about the type of information that we need. In our IVOS system, we do have a subrogation tab. If you want to review on a particular file what the subrogation status is, you may go to that tab and review it. Here, let me get my little, right here. Any questions?
Sandy, we've got a question in the chat box. What tools do you use to proactively identify whether subrogation would come into play?
The primary tools that our adjusters would use would be the Subrogation Job Aid that will assist them in their investigation.
So I need to get in with Jill here shortly, but so what do you know?
Well, I understand that it is a faculty member that lives off campus.
We're getting some background conversation from somebody there.
That was not good.
Kenny, did that answer your question? Or maybe you could be more specific?
Oh, yes, it did. I was just wondering if you guys have any proactive tools, because a lot, like, you know, when you have first, like a first major medical or something like that, how do you, I guess that's the perspective I'm coming from. Like, you know, a Blue Cross Blue Shield, when you have medical expenses or something like that, how would you know when someone goes to ER it's because of an accident or something like that if it's not on the claim? Or is there any proactive things that people do to figure that out?
Well, one of the things that we would do when we get a claim, we do take statements from the parties that are involved, and if they were injured, one of the questions we would ask is did they go to the emergency room, did they go to the doctor, had they had prior injuries. So it's that initial investigation where we're to ask the questions that will help us determine what type of medical bills are there. Does that address your question?
That does. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Well, if there are no further questions, I think we'll wrap this up. Thank you very much, Sandy. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we hope to see you for future ERM Toolbox webinars.